County Council meeting's now in session. The Honorable Mike Johnson will give the invocation and pledge of allegiance. Michael.
Go ahead.
Mike or Michael?
A few months ago, it was my turn to give invocation, and at that point, there had recently been a shooting in Las Vegas, and I asked for a moment of silence. I'm going to ask you for a moment of silence tonight for the shooting in Texas. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I want to welcome everybody to the council meeting, and I just want to remind the public that if you watch us on TV, we're going to now be on channel 103 on Mondays and Wednesdays. Next order of business is oath of office. As I call your name, if you'd come forward. Melody Kirsch, Marilyn, is that Hakeem, Jesselyn Anderson, and Derek Williams.
You didn't have any problem with his last name.
I do solemnly swear
That I am duly qualified,
according to the Constitution of this state,
according to the Constitution of this state,
to exercise the duties of the office to which I have been appointed,
to exercise the duties of this office to which I have been appointed,
and that I will, to the best of my ability,
and that I will, to the best of my abilities,
discharge the duties thereof,
discharge the duties thereof,
preserve, protect, and defend
and preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution of this state
the Constitution of this state
and of the United States.
and of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you, sir. Congratulations.
Thank you for your service.
You don't want his family dead.
Thanks for your service. Yes, sir. Nice to meet you.
Thank you, sir.
Under appearances, we have the York County Farm Bureau. Yes, ma'am, and welcome.
Thank you. My name is Beth White at 404 Pendergrass Road, York, and I'm here on behalf of the York County Farm Bureau, and we would like to say thank you. Thank you for working with us. We know that you have a hard job, and it's tough to keep a balance in this ever-growing county of ours, but we would like to say that you do a great job, and we hope that we can continue a good partnership with you. I've printed a list of farms and farmers off the top of my head that Mr. Harper's going to give to you, and it was over 69 that I just thought of today. And I thought that was a large number, and just to show you how huge agriculture is in our county. But as a small token of our appreciation, today we have brought some delicious strawberries grown right here in York for you to enjoy. If we can ever be of service to you in any way, just reach out to us. We are glad to help, and we just want to say thank you, thank you.
We appreciate everything that y'all do for the county,
Thank you.
Oh, grapes.
and we really appreciate the strawberries.
My wife's gonna
They
put
smell great. Wow.
Thank you. Go. Okay.
down here with my mint.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just grabbed that one too. No.
Yeah, he's gonna be late. I'll just throw one out.
Well, I appreciate them getting to.
Yep. Nope.
She will. She should be.
Very good. Thank you.
Thanks, Josh.
Okay, the next order of business is public forum, people that signed up on the sign-up sheet. And remember, you have 2 minutes, and after that, I have to stop you to be fair to the next person. First person is Mark Nix to discuss impact fees. And if you would, name and address for Karen.
Sure. Mark Nix, Home Builders Association of South Carolina, 625 Taylor Street, Columbia, South Carolina, 29201. And I have to admit, I am now hankering for some strawberry shortcake. That smells delicious. Ready? First, I want to thank you for having me. We can sit here and talk about the affordability issue, which I won't take your time tonight about that. I'm sure I have several more weeks to do so. I also would know there's a study that's already been sent to you through Dr. Joy Von Nessen, talking about the issues with the Tischer-Boyd study, the inaccuracies within it, and also a letter from Dick Unger from Blair Cato, talking about some of the legal ramifications. But what I want to do is kind of hit you more on what's going on with housing in your county. Thanks to the York County staff, we were able to do an economic study and just give you the findings of that. For every one house that's being built in York County, that includes, it brings back to the county $25.3 million in local income, $3 million in taxes and other revenue for local governments, and 359 local jobs. That's an ongoing effect. Now, we always hear this, that the growth doesn't pay for itself. We already showed that's the surplus of monies coming to the county for every house. That's including bringing standards and services up to where it was before. That includes schools, police, firefighters. And just to reinforce that, the Post and Courier sent out an article last Monday from Mount Pleasant. And here's what they said. They last year went from an impact fee of $1,860 per house to $6,161. The implication from that is over the last 3 quarters when that impact fee went into effect, they've had a slowdown of growth of 90%. 90% fewer permits. This is what their council had to say after that. We may have to raise taxes. The council needs to prepare for a shift away from reliance on growth-related revenue. And if you go back and look at it, the bonds that were just passed are paid for from one thing, the growth. If we take away 90% of your permits and 90% of your growth income, how are we going to take care of those bonds going forward? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The next person is Bryant Coulter, but I just want to, is it under public hearing, Brian? Is it under public hearing?
Brian Cover.
Sorry, it looks like Coulter. But yeah, you may want to wait for the public hearing. That you didn't have to sign up if you're doing public hearing. You'll have unrestricted time that way. Next person's Randy, is that Wise?
Weiss, yes.
Weiss, yes, sir.
Thank you. Karen, my name is Randy Weiss, 3210 Chester Highway. And I'd like to start thanking the council for their time. A lot of us have spoke. And fortunately or unfortunately, I had this presentation ready, when was it? August 21st of 2017. 2 weeks ago, we met on the 7th, and I got a little bit sidetracked with the meeting. It kind of went kind of fast, and I got confused at the end. But I thought the presentation was right for that meeting, so I dropped the ball. So I want to give a quick little presentation, a little history of where Jennifer and I have come from and what we're doing in York. We have a horse farm. Do you have that presentation? We purchased this property in 2010, and I've retired here. This is where we've decided to put our retirement home and what we want to do for, the rest of our time here. The reason we bought this property was for the commitment that the council has put to the AGC properties and their dedication to preserving the AGC in the western part of York County as it is today. We came down here, we looked at this is the Williamson. The next property is a Covington property, I believe. Karen? Oh. I don't think so.
Randy, remember you're only supposed to have 2 minutes. I'm gonna give you another minute or so.
Okay, thank you. Covington Dairy, I mean, there's a host of farms. This is the King Ranch Farm, the Sanchez property. This was where we were trying to get a concrete plant stopped a year ago for a zoning issue. You know, this is what I wanted to come in on the comprehensive plan, and I think it's important to a lot of us residents that have this AGC property, and there was a commitment that we thought was steadfast from York County to preserve this comprehensive plan, stick by, you know, preserving the western part of it. And that was the reason we elected York County to move to. Here's the western portion of York County. There's 1,200 farms in York County. 28% of the property is farmland. And the intent of saving that, and that's why it goes back to some of the stuff we had on the May 7th discussion with concrete plants, with the asphalt plants, with the quarry and things, that there's a large group of us that just want to keep it quiet, you know? And all of the other changing in the zoning interferes with that, and it takes away what we feel is just the quality of York County. You know, here's a census. It says there's 1,200 farms, 28% of it in York County is farm, which, you know, we'd like to preserve. So I think there's a large group of us that have that sentiment. I just wanted to say that's the reasons we moved here. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Mr. Blackwell, for
Yes,
giving
sir.
me a little extra time on
Yes,
that.
sir.
Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thanks. Next person is Tim.
Do I need to cut this?
Tim? Oh, there you are.
Good evening. Tim Heline, 2674 Cozy Cove Drive, York, South Carolina. Appreciate your time tonight. I don't get involved in too many political things. I'm not that educated on that, but I'm here to talk about the impact fee. I don't do business in Fort Mill, but I'm a realtor, own a real estate company, also a builder, a member of the Home Builder Association and the Real Estate Association. And I'm concerned about the speed of which this is going, this impact fee. I went to the Planning Commission meeting the other night, and there was way too many I don't knows for my comfort for the amount of money that is being discussed. I think every decision council's made in the past, there's probably some that said, boy, we want to bought that particular truck or that particular excavator or this or that. And I think this is huge dollars, going to potentially impact a lot of people, and it's going way too fast. I think there needs to be a lot more education with everybody involved to make sure this is the right way to go, and I don't believe it is. It's too big of an issue to guess wrong and to try and undo it if it was wrong. I was here when the economy was doing great about 12 years ago. I feel like my years down here are like dog years because I feel like I've been here all my life, but I went through the bad economy, no impact fee involved, just the economy hurt us, and I'm like, why would we want to shoot ourselves in the foot? I believe also, like Mark said, that construction does pay for itself. Rooftops pay for themselves. It's just like playing the game of Monopoly when you're a kid. You don't start off with hotels and apartments. You start off with houses, and it goes. But the Mount Pleasant issue, I think that's a mirror image of what we have going here. And I think that really could hurt us. And I would just like to see it slow down, everybody get more educated, and really see if this is the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Next person is Christy Spears, impact fee.
Thank you. I'm Christy Spears. I'm the board chair for Fort Mill School District. I live at 7102 Anchorage Lane in TGK. On behalf of the school district and the administration, we want to thank you for considering this increase to the impact fees. As you know, we are growing by approximately 1,000 students per year, causing us to build and open almost a new school every single year. We currently have a brand new school. We opened a middle school this year, a high school under construction, 2 new elementaries and a middle school that will open in the next 3 years. We're very encouraged by the state statute that has opened up another revenue stream for our building program. Up until this point, our only option was to continue to raise taxes on existing residents and commercial businesses. We've gone through the state-required study using the same consultant that you guys are using for yours. We feel like he has calculated the true impact of a new home, whether it be single-family or multifamily, on our facilities. And we would ask you to consider an increase to an impact fee more in line with the amount that he's actually calculated. What was presented and recommended by the Planning Commission was based on a 1996 study, and we have grown significantly since that time, far surpassing any estimates that were ever contemplated back then. So we would just ask you to consider looking at something that is far more recent and relevant today. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate that. Okay, next item is the consent agenda. Impact fee, reading one's in that, so if a council member has concerns and wants to pull it out, now's the time to speak up, otherwise just need a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And Audra or Andy, one thing if you'd provide for council members before the next meeting, per some phone calls I had today, just how it'll be work with, say, big developments where they phasing in, like they're building 200 homes and then 2 years from now they're going to do another 200 homes. If they've already started, how that affects them one way or the other.
It's in there.
And also, and that's great, but if you'd provide that clarification. And also how senior citizens would be affected, especially if they've, lived here their whole life and they've moved to a patio home or retirement home or whatever. So, at least for my information, but provide it to everybody.
Rick.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry. Yes, sir. Bill. Yes.
So we're canceling this week.
So, Michael, do we need to address that per the consent agenda, or can we just?
What's proposed,
What?
then it would be fine in the consent.
The public hearing is the 30th. So we're talking about having a workshop right after that?
For Wednesday.
Oh, well, then you need to pull it out and correct that, yes, please.
Correct the calendar.
Move to amend, remove
So that's 2 days from now, it's not gonna be happening?
Yes.
So we just found this out?
budget
Or
calendar
how did we know,
and consent to everything else except for the budget calendar.
Okay. Do we have a second, or this person that gave the original second? Who was it?
I did.
Okay.
But I do think that there were council members who weren't here when we talked about that, and I think we need to have some discussion on it, at least to make sure we're all together.
Okay, so can we
The
have?
concern was, are we going to move forward with the next workshop before public hearing? And so there was some discussion about whether or not to move that until after the public hearing. I didn't realize we were talking about doing it the same day as the public hearing. So I guess I'd like to hear from you, Chad.
Well, are we talking about this, or are
Well-
we talking about pulling this out of the consent agenda?
Can we get at least,
Thank
before we get in heavy in discussion, can we get a second on the
The last,
motion?
Second.
Okay, now we got discussion, Chad.
well, I mean, that depends on now we're just discussing pulling this out of the consent agenda. I guess where it goes is at the last item of new business, and that's when we typically talk about that. But yeah, it is the first I've heard of it.
Okay. Anybody else? Question on the motion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
I'm gonna make this for the record. I'm gonna make another motion to approve consent agenda. We've already pulled out the budget. I'm making a motion to approve consent agenda.
Second.
Discussion. Question on the motion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
No, what, I mean, we did it at the same time.
Technicality. I'm asking that we make sure that we pass.
Okay, well, I thought we did. Yeah.
I wanna make sure.
Okay, all right, so you just want to vote on it? All right.
It's a beautiful day outside today.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this,
It's a little stormy inside, though.
A little bit. Public hearing. Hold public hearing and approve second reading case number 1805 to rezone UD to BD3 at 3463 Highway 21 in the Fort Mill community. Anybody here want to speak against? Against? Anybody here want to speak in favor?
Can Dr. Lee speak for me? I'm the
Absolutely.
I hadn't really planned much to say. I thought our representative would be here from the community. But anyway, is there anything that I need to tell you as far as
Just,
fun?
this is for support of it, so if you,
Okay.
any,
We just want to be able to put a veterinary clinic in that facility as it is, and right now that's about the only animal-related use that UD does not allow. I also know that there's a master plan to rezone that whole exit 90 Carowinds Boulevard area, right, that we are located in, and this would hopefully be adjusted to help pursue that for you guys. Thank you.
thank you, ma'am.
We didn't get her name.
Oh, can you give your name and address again for
Oh,
Karen?
sorry. My name is Stephanie Lee, and I live at 228 Gringley Hill Road in Fort Mill, 29708.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else want to speak in favor? Do we have a motion to close?
Move to close.
Second.
Discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those no, do we have a new motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those no. Next item is hold a public hearing, approve second reading, case number 1806 at 558, 1586, and 1600 Merritt Road in the Fort Mill community. Does anybody here want to speak against? Anybody want to speak in favor? Yes, sir. And name and address for.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, council members, thank you. Brandon Pridemore, Arjo Harrison Associates out of Fort Mill, South Carolina, 127 Ben Casey Drive, Suite 101. Just wanted to let you know that I'm here to represent the Merritt family. There's 4 family members. 3 are petitioners in this rezoning application. Just a couple of facts I wanted to point out for the record is that there are no plans for development. There are no contracts to sellers or anything. We got 3 of the property owners who live on the property. We're simply trying to reconsolidate the zoning on the property as we have mixed zoning currently and downzone the property to residential uses, mostly for personal financial reasons that the family may or may not choose to disclose, but we're here to answer any questions you may have.
We just hear what you got to say. We don't ask any.
That's it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else want to speak in favor? Do we have a motion to close?
Move to close.
Second.
Discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those no, do we have a new motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion, all those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Next item, hold public hearing, approved second reading, case number 1807, UD rezoning project, Anybody here want to speak against? Anybody want to speak in favor? Have a motion to close?
Move to close.
Second.
Discussion, all those in favor say aye. Those no, can we have a new motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion, all those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Next item, council to conduct a public hearing and consider adopting a resolution in support of the issuance by the South Carolina Jobs Economic Development Authority of its Economic Development Revenue Bonds, Acts Retirement Life Communities Incorporated, Obligated Group, Series 2018, and one or more series, and in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $30,000 pursuant to the provisions of Title 41, Chapter 43, Code of Laws of South Carolina, 1976, as amended. Anybody here want to speak against? Anybody want to speak in favor? Have a
Move to close.
Second.
discussion, all those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Do we have a new motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion?
Do we need to?
Yes,
cover that?
Mr. Roddy.
Did you say 30,000 or 30 million? Because I think that's what,
30
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
I think Robert.
See, I think in small numbers. That's 30 million, I'm sorry. Let the record show 30 million. So backing up to that figure, anybody want to speak against? R4? Okay, so motion carries as was. Council to hold a public hearing and consider third reading of an ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of a fee agreement by and among Round Point Mortgage Servicing Corporation.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
There needs to be a vote on the resolution.
Oh, we didn't vote?
No, sir.
Okay, question on the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Next item, council to hold a public hearing and consider third reading of an ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of a fee agreement by and among Round Point Mortgage Servicing Corporation, formerly known as Project Leah, Fort Mill LD Number 1 LLC, formerly known as Project Leah Developer, collectively the companies in York County, South Carolina, whereby York County will enter into a fee in lieu of tax agreement with the companies, providing for payment by the companies of certain fees in lieu of ad valorem taxes, providing for special source revenue credits in connection with such agreement, providing for the allocation of fees in lieu of taxes payable under the agreement for the establishment of a multi-county industrial business park, and other matters related thereto. Anybody here want to speak against? Anybody want to speak in favor? Yes, sir. Welcome. Just be sure name and address for Karen.
Good evening. My name is Roman Vega. I live at 8615 1010 Hole Lane in Waxhaw, North Carolina. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of council.
Welcome again.
Thank you. I am here tonight on behalf of Round Point and our CEO, Kevin Brungart. I want to thank the council for your consideration of approval of the discretionary incentives for our project. Our company is an innovation company focused on delivering solutions in the mortgage industry. The evaluation we went through to choose a new location was extensive and competitive. Our team evaluated multiple factors and opportunities in South Carolina, North Carolina, and Texas. In choosing York County, we look to invest over $29 million and create over 1,000 new jobs. Our new headquarter location will be at 2280 Deerfield Drive in Fort Mill, which is the location for the new South Bridge Office Park. We appreciate the quality service your economic development team and the State Department of Commerce have shown throughout this entire process. We look forward to working with them and others as we join the South Carolina business community and help strengthen the local economy here in York County. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate bringing 1,000 jobs here to the county.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Anybody else want to speak in favor? We have a motion to close?
Motion closed.
Second. Discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Need a new motion?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Next item. Old business, Patrick Hamilton to provide a quarterly update on the Pennies for Progress.
Good evening, council. I'm due for another quarterly update here. Some of you may have seen this on Friday, so the rest of you. So Pennies 3, a couple of big items going on right now. Councilwoman Love, I'm proud to tell you that Pole Branch Road, Highway 274 is finally under construction. The crews are out there doing some clearing now. They're going to do a lot of the utility work first. They'll get those utility relocations out of the way. Then the road crew can get in there and get done. So just want to make sure people aren't anticipating Pole Branch Road to be fixed next week. I mean, this is a 2 to 2.5 year project, so it's gonna go on for a while, but we all know it's much needed. Highway 2151 project in Fort Mill, we have received right-of-way plan approval from DOT, which means we can now start acquiring right-of-way on that project. There's over 100 parcels we have to either get a right-of-way or permission from, so this is going to be at least an 18-month process. We are planning to have a public meeting in September. We figured it wouldn't be that good to do it during the summer with a lot of people on vacation, school's out. So once school gets back in September, people are back on a regular schedule, we will have a public meeting up there for that project. And Gold Hill I-77 interchange is currently scheduled for an August letting. As a reminder, the DOT is letting this project and will be managing the construction since there's $2.5 million in federal funds. As of Friday, there were 2 tracks remaining for the right-of-way acquisition. We've agreed for a settlement on those properties. We're just waiting for the paperwork to get signed, so hopefully we can get that in this week and get all that information down to the DOT so we can try to keep that August letting. Excuse me, Pennies 4 major projects. There are 7 of the projects under design. 6 of them are being designed by our consultants. As a reminder, the 21 turn lanes in Rock Hill are being done in-house by the DOT at the district office in Chester. But the other 6 are under design, under contract, so the early work is getting started on those, doing some survey, traffic counts, etc., coming up with some concept designs as well. There are 5 other projects that are currently being negotiated. We are hoping to have all these in front of council by June 18th to be under contract. I do know at least 2 of them are scheduled to be on the June 4th meeting, hopefully a 3rd one, and hopefully the remainder of those can come on June 18th, and all of them can be under design this summer. The resurfacing contract. So as you know, y'all loaned the Pennies program $16 million back in November. We've already sent almost $12 million of that to the DOT to do some resurfacing. The first group was bid back in February. More of the eastern side of the county. The roads on the left, Springsteen, New Gray Rock, and Old Friendship, are scheduled to be completed by November 30th of this year, with Harris Road and Mount Gallant Road scheduled to be completed by June of 2019. Group 2, this was rebid a few weeks ago back in May. The bids have come in. I have talked to DOT. The bid is going to be awarded this time. Those are 4 roads on the western side of the county. Not sure on a start time for those projects. I know probably 1, maybe 2 roads will get done this year, with the other 2 being done next year. We forgot to mention back on Group 1, DOT had the pre-construction meeting last week for that group, so hopefully that contractor can get started in the next couple weeks or so on that one. It is about $11.7 million worth of resurfacing. Just compared to our budget on Pennies 4 was about $12.7 million for those 9 roads, so we're off to a good start. We're already starting to work on getting some roads down to DOT to put next year's packages together. One of those roads will include Cherry Road in Rock Hill from Alumni Street up to D Street. That's one of the major resurfacing project we're doing on Pennies 4. We've already done some geotech work out there. That road is in very poor condition, and not a lot of structure out there. So we're going to have to basically rebuild the entire Cherry Road from Alumni up to D Street. So that's going to be a pretty intense project that we're working with DOT on to get that out over the winter for bid. And some few of the projects that are under construction. So River Road, looking to wrap that up hopefully July or sometime this summer, hopefully in July. McConnell's Highway, they have got some pavement down out there, but that's still looking at a spring of 19 completion date. Poe-Quance Railroad Crossing should be wrapping up in June or July of this year. University Drive, if we can get some rain to stop, we can probably have that project finished in a week or 2. The rains really hurt that project, but looks like we might clear up for a couple of days to be able to get that work done. And Highway 97, last we talked to the contractor, would be late summer, early fall completion, probably September, October timeframe with that one. So that is a quick rundown of the major items going on right now in Pennies. I'll be happy to answer any other specifics that any of y'all may have.
Questions for Patrick?
I didn't see anything up there.
Mr. Roddy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I didn't see anything on your first slide. Can you go back to it? Me and Chris were just wondering, we didn't see anything about Highway 72, from 901 to
Right.
Rambo.
That one was a Pennies 3 project, so that one's still on trucking along. We've already submitted preliminary right-of-way plans, so the plan is to be under right-of-way acquisition this fall.
Okay. And also, is Cherry Road a city or state road?
State road.
Okay, because they have let that one just bottom out. It's one of the worst roads in Rock Hill.
Yes, it is.
And it's a shame they had to wait on Pennies to come in and fix it, so.
And I have
Yes.
one question.
Mr. Winkler.
With 97 looking like fall, do you know what that's going to do to Legion Road?
That is on
Legion.
that's a separate contract. So the DOT is going to do Legion Road in-house with their in-house reclamation crew. So that is not reliant on our project.
Okay, because I had heard they might wait till after the detour was done and back on 97 before they do that. So.
Gotcha. I think, yeah, I'll have to double check on when the detour is going to be closed, but I know it was going to be August at the earliest before DOT was going to be able to start on Legion. And with our project ending around September, October, I don't think that would be much of an issue.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Patrick?
I would
Yes,
just ask that.
Ms. Cox.
I completely, because we get a barrage of emails that come through, usually right after the budget is here. I didn't see the report, but Karen just whispered that it was emailed earlier. Can we just make sure that we attach this to the agenda so that when the council gets it, that it's with that?
Certainly.
And one of the biggest things was just to make sure that we are within budget and have a one, I thought we were gonna have a one-page thing that would just say, we're within budget, we're on schedule. And if there were any problems, you're not seeing any problem, I take it from the,
Not at this point,
thank you.
or nothing that's worthy to bring to council. Every project has problems, but most of them are able to be resolved.
Anybody else for Patrick? Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Next item, Growth Management Coordinator Audra, to provide a monthly update.
Good evening. Waiting for Karen. Thank you. So my monthly update, I'm going to go over 4 topics. I think it's 4 tonight. Impact fees, Fort Mill School District. You just approved the first reading of those ordinances. And really the reason why I wanted to put this up here is for the hearing and the second reading, because the public watches this. I just wanted to point out that the public hearing and second reading will be June 27th at a special called meeting at the McKelvey Center here in York, and that's 212 East Jefferson Street. I have had a couple people ask me about the process, and just for the public, because it is a public hearing, anybody can come and speak. They don't have to sign up or do anything ahead of time. And then, assuming all goes well, third reading will be July 16th. County impact fees. This one is moving at a little slower pace, but we are getting ready for some milestones. The first one being what's known as the demographics memo. That is the basis of the report that is prepared. Basically, it establishes how the county is growing and your anticipated growth rate. Consultant plans on presenting that to the Planning Commission on July 9th at their meeting. I am not anticipating presenting anything to council separately. All of this is running through the Planning Commission. So I would need to know if there is something you want me to do above and beyond that, so I can coordinate with the consultant and I can coordinate schedules. After the demographics memo is presented, the consultant felt fairly confident that he would be able to give a draft assessment report for staff review sometime in August, with the anticipation we would present to the Planning Commission in September. Again, so it's clear for everyone on how I am proceeding on this, that is just the assessment report. Unlike the Fort Mill School District impact fees, I'm not going to try and run the ordinances at the same time, because council has never provided direction to staff that you really want to do impact fees or don't want to do impact fees. The whole purpose was to have a study done, present it to council, and then provide direction to staff on whether you want to proceed. So that is what you will get. You will get the report most likely in either the second meeting in September or October. So again, if there's anything different that you want me to do, I need to know that sooner versus later. Also, when we set up the contract with the consultant, everything was running through the Planning Commission. We did not set up stakeholder meetings with the consultant, which means on the assessment report especially, there's no public hearing, no public meeting. So if that is something council wants me to do, to have different meetings with the public or the developers, again, I would need direction on that as well. Again, if ordinances are prepared, there will be a public hearing associated with that, but for the assessment report, there's no public input anticipated at this point.
Well, I guess I have a couple of questions. Are we going to interject now?
Go ahead.
One of the things that I would like to know, if this is something that we could gather, is what is the excess capacity of the bond referendum buildings that we just had, that the folks just approved? If there's some way to get that more
Yes, we have
than average.
We have the information, and I don't want to do it off the top of my head, but the consultant sat down with all of the departments, including family court, sheriff, and then EMS and 911, and we discussed what type of extra capacity we have, and I will get you that information.
Okay. What I'm understanding is we're taking a different approach with this one than we did with the first one, because I don't remember us voting on, did we actually take a vote on the Fort Mill School District when you say you want to get direction, I guess how did you get direction with the Fort Mill School District one?
That process was kind of separate from me, that I got the report, said ordinances needed to be drafted, and that's what I did with it. On this one,
State law required the study. and
Yeah.
So it was kind of driven by the state law and their request.
I think the Fort Mill impact fee study is something that's important. I just don't know why it's taking us with the same consultant so much longer. And I don't know what the support of council would be for an impact fee study. I think it could dramatically affect what we end up passing on our budget. But I do think that what I heard council say last week, correct me if I'm wrong, is that we wanted to at least be able to be in a position to vote on this and to be done by year end, and to set it up for that.
that, I heard that loud and clear, and that's why I'm bringing this up. That will be somewhat challenging because the report is the basis for everything, and I'm telling you that it's not going to be presented to you until sometime in September. Then I would anticipate y'all voting on the report and directing staff to go ahead and prepare the ordinances. If you're telling me you don't want to proceed that slowly and you want me to go ahead and just draft ordinances at the same time and present everything in one fell swoop, I can do it that way too.
No, I think the most important thing is just to do the proper process and just let the experts know what that proper process is.
Okay.
In a timely fashion, of course.
Okay.
So Audra, I have one question about not holding the stakeholder meetings. Because I feel like even on the few ordinances that we're trying to pass now, we're kind of having to backtrack and hold some of those. So, I mean, does that not in itself create a delay by maybe, I mean, I feel like if I were a stakeholder, which I am technically, but I feel like if I were a stakeholder, I would want to maybe meet with that consultant who's going to be making the recommendation, rather than after the consultant has made a recommendation.
And I understand, and that's part of the timing and how quickly you want to move and what type of role you want for the consultant as well as for staff. So, I mean, I could make a recommendation right now that you probably should have the report first, and then if you're going to move forward on impact fees, then we can do some stakeholder meetings after the fact.
That would be the appropriate time to do it. The math is what the math is. And so that's when y'all would make a policy decision after you have a report submitted. And the reason, and I know y'all know this, but the reason the Fort Mill School District process was so much different than ours is it's their process. Because we have to pass it on their behalf, but it's their request.
Well, they had already done their
Yes.
process.
That's right, that's right.
Yes, they had.
We're just doing
So their public involvement was their public involvement, their stakeholders were their stakeholder meetings, et cetera.
We're just doing the legal steps to give them what they had already studied and asked.
That's right.
So why would we not say whether or not we're interested in impact fees? I mean, do we have to wait to see do we have to wait to see what they're going to be before we say, yeah, we feel like we need impact fees?
The reason why the way I'm proceeding the way I am is when this issue first came up, I would say, if not a majority, a significant portion of council said, you don't even know if you want to take on impact fees, you'd like to see the report first and see if it even makes sense. And that's why I'm proceeding this way. So
Why are we doing the study at all if we're not willing to try and get it done before year end, when we're going to have a change of council?
Because you don't know.
If the rest of folks aren't interested in trying to do that, then I would think that when we voted to approve the cost of this, that the taxpayers are going to pay for this, is that we're going to follow through with the recommendations that are going to be made by the consultant. So I just think that from a timing perspective, that it poses an issue.
Well, one point I want to bring back up, I think it's already been said, was that it was kind of pointed out that since we're doing this anyway, since state law requires us to do this, we might as well make the study comprehensive to see if there's any logic for the rest of the county, and I think the majority of council members were kind of in agreement with that, well, let's just see what the study shows. The study may come back, because I'm not really pro impact fee, but I was just told, hey, the study may come back and say, hey, that's wrong, don't even do it. So everybody kind of agreed, well, let's just see what the study says.
I think what I'm hearing, Mr. Chairman, is what Audra's laying out there is just if she, and correct me if I'm wrong, if she pre-prepares ordinances with that blank, that once the report gets in, that would expedite the process, I guess.
Yeah, it's gonna be very difficult to do the ordinance when you're waiting on a state to decide which impact.
That's right.
The reason that it worked better for Fort Mill is because they knew, I mean, it's just schools. They're talking
That's
about
right.
seats in a school, and they had already figured it out. We may do a water impact fee, we may do stormwater impact fee, we may do none of them. But the study is, but I do hope there was at least some willingness to consider impact fees. I certainly didn't vote for it because I thought we might as well do it because we're already doing it. So I hope there is, I mean, I hope we're gonna be open-minded. And I'm not as concerned about the council changes. I mean, back when it had two-year terms, they did that. It might happen, but if it's good for the county, it's good for the county, no matter who's sitting up here.
Okay, we just want to make sure it's efficient and time-wise.
Audra, I mean, let's say it comes before us in September, we say, this is what we want it to look like. What is the timeline? What's the realistic, you now have an ordinance in front of us and we're voting?
I would say the realistic timeline is at the quickest 4 months, because the consultant is contractually obligated to draft the ordinance for us. Then it needs to go over to the county attorney and me for our input, and then we have to follow the process, which is 3 readings and the 30-day notice. So I really do think 4 months at a minimum is what it's going to be.
And let me clarify just so I understand. 4 months to passage or 4 months to first reading?
4 months to passage, yeah.
Passage.
Yeah, passage.
Okay, so
Thank you.
by the second meeting in January, we would be looking at most likely third and final reading.
Best case scenario, yes.
Yeah, in a
Yes.
4-month span, okay.
And that's where the stakeholder meeting comes in, and you don't need to make a decision tonight, but I'm just pointing out the timeline, that if then you wanted public input and stakeholder meetings, that slows down that process. It just does.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could also interject, it was out of courtesy to the Fort Mill schools that we put them and their request in front of ours. So in so doing, we're subject to the timeline that's in front of us with the Fort Mill school impact fees.
Okay. Mr. Winkler?
And obviously, I think we all knew there was a need for it in the Fort Mill schools. That was obvious. We don't know yet what it's gonna look like, or what, that was a school impact fee. That's obvious they need it over there. But we don't know what it's gonna look like in the county yet, because we've gotta wait on the numbers. And the numbers, I agree, we gotta have public input on things, but I don't want to rush the ordinance too much along with that before we know what the numbers say. Because as we've seen with some things that come before us in the last week or two, we can rush an ordinance sometimes and not have enough public input on the ordinance side of it. The numbers are, like you said, the numbers are the numbers when it comes to the memo. Then we can get the shareholder, meetings, the public, and get that input on the ordinance, which is the part that really we have the control over. We don't have control over what the memo says. It's the numbers.
Audra, let's move on to the next.
Okay. Stormwater Utility District, we are on schedule to present the first reading June 18th, second reading July 16th with public hearing, and then third and final reading if council moves it forward August 20th. Just wanted to let you know we are doing public outreach on all of this. I have spoken to the school districts about the Stormwater Utility District. I am making a presentation to the Economic Development Board tomorrow, and then I reached out to the Chamber of Commerce as well to offer to come and meet with them and explain it in further detail if they would like me to. Stormwater ordinance revisions, the consultant is moving forward on this, and they're, in addition to the ordinance, they're going to create a separate design manual. They said they're about 30 to 40% done. They felt like they may have a draft ordinance to staff within the next month or two for internal review. And then we at staff level talked about, again, stakeholder meetings, and we decided that we would go ahead and do a couple of those, and we'll be scheduling those over the next couple months as well.
So Audra, I have a question. Does that include public input at all on that?
Yes, what we are going to do with the stakeholder meetings, we're going to divide them up into groups, and we'll have engineers in one group because they'll look at the technical aspects of it. We're going to do the public in a separate group, and probably the developers as a third group. So.
On the Stormwater Utility District, when you say the chamber, is that all of the chambers?
So far, I've only reached out to the greater chamber.
Could you include those chambers?
Sure. Okay. Yes. And then the ordinance revisions, I just wanted to let you know what I did for phase one, what I call phase one, which is wineries and event venues, which you all asked me not to schedule until June 18th. I did meet with the agritourism group. Thank you to Beth White. She reached out to me and organized that. We had a very good meeting last week, and really their primary concern was just including the word agritourism, even though it was only associated with wineries. So I said, well, that's easy. I needed to call those ancillary uses with a winery something. If agritourism is just not working for anybody, I can change it. So I'm going to come up with a different way to describe it. But because second reading has been passed, I can't just change an ordinance on my own. So my plan is to bring it back to council June 18th, ask you to defer and direct me to make some changes on it. And then we're going to continue to work with the agritourism group. They asked us to continue working with them on doing some potential ordinance revisions that may help them in their efforts. And that's it.
Any other questions for Audra? Thank you, ma'am. Sorry.
I apologize. And I ask this about every time. Where are we with the Southbridge Development Agreement?
That is one that is on my list, yeah. I'm working on it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, next item, council to consider amending and second reading of an ordinance to establish operating and capital budgets for the operation of the county government of York County for the fiscal year commencing July 1st, 2018, to provide for the levy of taxes for York County for the fiscal year commencing July 1st, 2018, to provide for the expenditure of tax revenues and other county funds, to maintain its reserve account, to establish and fund a supplemental debt service fund, to establish and fund the account for York County Economic Development, and to rescind the technology replacement ordinances number 613 and number 912, and provide for other fiscal matters relating to county government. Somebody?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Johnson.
today I reached out to Kevin Madden and asked him to supply me, I have it, unfortunately it's now in a 4-inch 3-ring binder. I asked him to give me that information regarding paying back our bond debt at a faster rate and the potential tax savings with it. I asked him to also provide what if you push it out 1 year, 2 years, 3 years longer, perhaps lowering our payment now, but certainly requiring more interest to be paid over the long term. Kevin sent that to me. Unfortunately, I was already in my car driving here by that time and have not had a chance to look at it. But I'm going to ask Kevin to send that to all council members because I think it's part of this is I spoke to an HOA group the other day and I asked them, I said, if we could save you millions of dollars, but you're going to pay more today, but you're going to save millions and millions and millions of dollars over the long term, is this worth it? And for 95% of the people in the room, they believed it was worth it, and I believe it's worth it. I think right now, though, we are looking at at one section, and perhaps if we spread it out a year or two, or we might see it. We might see a number come down in today's hurt, and we could still live with the savings. Or we may look at it and say, no, it's worth having a little groan now to save the millions in interest. So it's just something for us to consider as we're moving forward towards third reading. I know that we don't have third reading scheduled until the last meeting in June anyway. So it's certainly something I think we ought to look at and consider as we're going through this process.
Any other comments, Mr. Well, I think Ms. Cox, and then I'll come to you.
Robert had his hand up first, actually.
That's all right.
Actually,
As long as, we'll get to me sometime, that's fine.
To that point, and I had the same questions that Michael did, and what I'm concerned about is that we are putting the entire burden of the bond referendum cost on to the taxpayers, and we're not even considering the impact that a countywide impact fee would have on this discussion. $2 million, I certainly believe it's responsible to pay off debt early. From what I've been told, we're talking about in this budget now, a $2 million increase, and that it will save the taxpayers $9 million in interest. Well, $30 million is already going to be paid by the taxpayers because we're putting it into a reserve account. So half of that, $4.5 million of the savings is being done because the taxpayers would basically be putting their funds that are in reserve into an account to bear interest and pay off that. What what I think that we should do, and what I think would even potentially be something that we ought to consider, is how about asking the developers to pay, and I can't imagine that it would be less than this. There's this question about how much would it be. Well, these buildings that we've just approved and that we asked the taxpayers to pay for, we were told that it would take us through 25 to 30 years, and I believe that there's excess capacity of that. Well, at $108 million, that translates into, if it's only 25%, 27 million, which would capture the difference. I think that we need to be proactive in thinking about that. I think that there's an offset there that we can look out for all of the taxpayers in York County and help do some good for them. That's not just directly related to one area in Fort Mill. We've got to be proactive, or we're going to be in a situation that we find ourselves with Fort Mill. We also, in the current budget, don't have the .4 mil, which is mandated by the state. We have no ability to deal with that. That's not in the budget. To me, that ought to be in there. And it needs to go on the bill, and it needs to say that this came exactly what Kevin suggested that we do. That, to me, is even more important than us trying to pay the debt off in 3 years or 5 years and put it all on the taxpayers, instead of at least trying to see if we can bump some of that to the development community. As I understand it, the current 5.4 mil increase for the capital improvement plan, that's going to be potentially significantly reduced. And so I guess that a couple of concerns I have with that, if we have $1 million in electricity work at Moss, which is directly related to the improvements that we asked the taxpayers to vote for on the referendum, yet we're basically double dipping again in order to pay that. We should have incorporated that, and that should be something that's included in the impact fee discussion. In the critical needs area, I still don't fully understand that, so I would ask for some additional direction as to how we're going to be funding that. It seems very difficult to change it year in and year out. I think having some sort of static way to deal with it would be a better way to approach it.
Can you line item address everything, Christie? I mean, not now, but, I mean, to get that to us in the next couple of days?
I can. I'll take a stab at that in an email, and we'll go back and forth. Y'all are the answers that y'all are looking for. I talked with Christie about this earlier, and I completely agree. If y'all are going to do impact fee and it can be used to pay off the debt, I think that's a smart thing to do. The timing of when that's going to happen would probably coincide well with next year's budget. What I would again encourage y'all to do is to make sure we take the steps in this year's budget to position ourselves to pay the debt off. And in next year's budget, as in every budget after that, we will look at the monies we have coming in and the amount of monies we are setting aside and adjust accordingly. I've prepared procedures and policies similar to Michael, and I'm going to send it out to all of y'all as well on how I want to manage that fund, the new fund that's going to be the money set aside. It's going to require, right now I've got semi-annual updates to y'all on the status of where all that money stands right now and where we're projected to end. If we can start getting another source of revenue coming in through impact fees to reduce the amount of millage we're going to levy, if we find that out next spring, I think we incorporate that in the budget next spring. But what I don't want us to do is to adjust this year's budget thinking something might happen. We can always adjust. We've got 4 or 5 years to adjust the 2 mills and plus the 1 mil we're going to ask for next year to pay that debt. We can adjust that every year during the budget process as needed over here. But I want to make sure, I think it's a priority of council from what I've heard from all y'all, that we position ourselves to be able to pay that debt off when possible. And I'll give you an example. If we extend it 1 more year, and we wait till 2025, that's about $2.3 million in interest right there. If we try to refinance some of that, you're going to incur between 1% and 2% transaction costs and the cost of issuance for doing that. It is clearly financially, if you can swing it, the smarter thing to do to pay it off when you can in full.
Okay, but if you could, because she has
I'll send an email out. Yes, sir.
a litany of several things, and I'm going in the order I heard people. Mr. Williams.
Yes, sir. Now, I was just going to, I'm open to what Mr. Johnson was talking about, but that is to I would like to see us do it if there are citizens' concerns we need to address. Just pushing it down the road is, I mean, if we're going to take the savings just so we can drop the amount we pay, it just pushes it down the road, and the citizens, we're asking their employees and other folks to make some sacrifices to do this year. We're just going to have to continue to ask them more and more down the road, if we don't address it, and Mr. Madden made the other point, is that it does, putting it out a year, although it saves some money that we can spend a day, it does increase the interest expense and other expenses. So I do want to see it as well, but I think Mr. Johnson and I have two different uses for the potential savings. If we're going to do it, we do it. If there are citizens' concerns that we need to address, then we need to find ways to address them, and that's one way to find it.
Mr. Winkler.
I just say, I think impact fees can be a good tool for us to use, but there's no way they would be in time for this budget that we're having to vote on now. So I think we gotta vote on what's before us, and the issues I have with what's before us right now is there's too many numbers that just aren't, we don't know what we're voting on yet, because the capital improvements or projects fund is still out there. We don't know what it is. You know, that's my concern more than the impact fee. You know, on the surface, I think the impact fee could be a very good tool for us to use to offset the taxes and stuff, but it can't be done in this budget. It's gotta be next year, because I mean, we're not even gonna have a report till September, you know, so we can't get it in this year's budget unless we just took a wild guess at what it would be, and I don't like doing budgets on wild guesses, which is why I have a problem with the second reading tonight, because we still don't know where we're at on some of the stuff, so.
Did I hear Mr. Roddy?
Yes, sir. I want to challenge all our citizens to really take a hard look at what we're doing when we're talking about the county's finances. Paying off our debt service by 2024 is a real aggressive plan, but it saves us a ton of money. And I can't stress enough, I've met with Kevin, I've met with Bill, I've looked at this, and once we pay that debt service off, those taxes come off the tax roll. Those come off the books. You know, we have some people who said, well, once we pay it all off, what's the likelihood of future council going back and reborrowing and running it back up again? Well, that remains to be seen. But when we're talking about eliminating 12 mills off a tax bill come 2024, 2025, that's a real aggressive plan. That saves us money. That lowers your taxes. You know, we can kick at it a little bit, reach at it a little bit, but to make a real impact, I'm solid on the 2 mills this year, the 1 mill next year, and stay on track to do this. Let's make a commitment to save the taxpayers money, even though it's a little pinch now, but it's a lot of relief in 2024. And I think if our citizens really took a look at what we're doing, and I know some council members, and I've been communicating over the last couple of weeks saying, don't get sticker shock by hearing a 10 mil increase or whatever this thing lands at. We're about to ask for, let's say, a record high increase in mills, but it's not a record high in impact on your tax bill. You know, I want to get Kevin to state for the record what an actual mill, the value of a mill is, because when people and council members here we're looking to increase 9 or 10 mills, the general public doesn't translate that into tax dollars. So I want Kevin to go on the record to say what an actual mill is, so when you hear us talk about we're going up 6 mills, 7 mills, 8 mills, you know what that relates to when it comes to your tax bill. Because just like walking into an attorney's office, you hear language, but you can't connect that to the everyday. So I want him to kind of explain for us and for people in the audience and at home, what does 1 mill impact means to a tax bill?
Base it on a $100,000 home.
$100,000 home.
And a $400,000 business.
Okay. First thing I want to clarify is it won't be a 10 mil increase. Eliminate that thought right now. On a $100,000 unoccupied house, 1 mil would equate to $4, okay? On a $400,000.
$4 per year.
Per year.
Yeah.
Okay. For a $400,000 commercial business, it's going to basically be $24. It's 6%, so 6 times 4 is going to be $24.
Per year.
Yes, sir.
So when we're talking about, let's use a 8 mil or 7 mil. If you're on a home of $100,000 even, you're looking at $28. If you're on a $200,000 home, that's $56, and so on and so on. So when you hear us saying a mil, 5 mil, 6 mil, 7 mil, do the math. 1 mil equals $4 on a residential home. Now, it's a little different from a commercial property and all that, but the basis starts at the residential. And obviously, if you can afford a $500,000 home, I'll be glad to stand in front of you and say, yeah, I would like to ask you for this amount of money based on whatever this mill is. Because if you live in a $1 million home, I'll be glad to stand in front of you saying, this is what we need from you to make York County better. And I think that's where the rubber meets the road, and we can stop playing the politics with not wanting to raise taxes, because I think sometimes it gets irresponsible when we don't do the right thing financially and get this thing back on track. But I do want to go on record to say I still want council to consider some type of raise for the employees or retention bonus. We don't want to take that off the table. And I think that's about all the notes that I had. But please don't get sticker shock when we start talking about an increase of 6, 7, 8 meals. It only equates to $4 per meal.
Good. Question on the motion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no.
No.
So that was,
Who voted no? Christian Roberts?
council to approve second reading of an ordinance to amend the code of the County of York, South Carolina, Chapter 155, Sections 155.385, 155.387, 155.388, and 155.390, in order to amend and update to the Transportation Corridor Preservation Overlay Ordinance for the purpose of adding clarifying language, removing completed roadway projects from the capital sales and use tax project list of roads, to add the 2017 capital sales and use tax projects to the list, to provide for a public hearing, and to provide for other matters related thereto.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion. Question on the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Next item. Council to consider amending and third reading of an ordinance to amend the York County Code of Ordinances, Chapter 155 zoning code, so as to reclassify mining to major resource extraction and minor resource extraction based on size of operation and duration, to provide for regulatory provisions related thereto, to amend the definition and use table in order to establish the uses and provide for the districts in which they are allowed or removed, to establish major and minor resource extraction as a special exception uses in AGC and ID, to establish only minor resources extraction as a special exception in AGC 1 and LI, and to remove all reference to mining in RUD and UD, making it a prohibited use, to amend supplemental regulations in AGC, AGC 1, ID, and light industrial in order to address items such as hours of operation, dust reduction measures, adoption of a performance standards agreement, development of or an access and routing plan, a fencing plan, an in-use plan, and proof of other required permit approvals, and where applicable, provide for separation requirements, setback, screening, and operations plan, and limited extension provisions, and to provide for other matters related thereto.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion. Question on the, yes?
I
yes,
just wanted to ask,
Yes.
I just wanted to confirm.
Sure.
One thing. Audra, so that has the same overlays as what we had requested for the concrete plants?
No, these have all of the overlays.
All the overlays?
All the original ones, yes.
Okay, all right.
Okay. Question on the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Next item, council to consider amending and third reading of an ordinance to amend the York County Code of Ordinances, Chapter 155 zoning code, so as to provide for non-metallic mineral product manufacturing, to provide for regulatory provisions related thereto, to amend the definition and use table in order to establish the uses and provide for the districts in which they are allowed or removed, to change from a permitted use to a special exception use in ID, and to remove as a permitted use in UD, to amend individual district use regulations in ID by adding supplemental regulations in order to address items such as minimum lot size, access and routing plans, separation screening, dust regulation, performance standards agreements, and proof of other governmental regulatory compliance requirements permits, to remove NMPM as an allowable use in UD, to invoke the pending ordinance doctrine, and to provide for other matters related thereto.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion. Yes, I've heard
Roberts.
Mr. Williams.
Yeah,
I heard
Roberts
you.
say the same. I imagine
You got to
that's
speak up. I
subject
just
to the same conditions that we approved at the second reading, which include to remove the limits on hours of operations, and 2, to remove the separation requirements from overlays except for the Lake Wiley and Catawba River buffers. the AGC and RUD significant historical and architectural sites overlay.
Thank you.
And that's what we're talking about, all right?
Made the motion.
No, she did.
I made the motion.
But it's for
Yeah.
what we passed last time.
Yeah, well, that's not what the thing reads without the conditions.
Yeah, that was, well, I'll let you speak, and then I'm after you.
And I was just going, for clarification purposes for the people who may be watching at home, because we had so much concern last time and confusion last time. This is the third and final reading, and AGC is not a permit, it's not a permitted use in AGC. It's just for clarification to the public on that.
So Audra, the buffers that made ID zoning impossible, those buffers were removed?
With those conditions that I just
Yes.
read, they are.
Yeah, well, I just want to hear it.
No, I want to be clear too. What was done was the minimum separation still exists, but the certain overlays were removed. The scenic overlay, the airport overlay, there's a couple others that were removed, but the Lake Wiley and Catawba River buffer remain, and the historic and architectural sites overlay stays.
So the 500-foot buffer issue, that's still in there?
There's still a minimum separation from residential uses.
500 feet. So
500
essentially
feet.
then, guide me here, I'm assuming, so I don't want to assume, that means in practical terms, there's really not an ID that'll be practical for, say, a concrete plant.
There are very few currently zoned ID parcels that
So
meet the
essentially,
minimum.
we're outlawing concrete plants.
Yes, that what would have to happen is you'd have to look for another property to rezone to ID.
Okay,
And
so,
most of those are in the western part of the county that meet the minimum separation.
so the only other thing we could do would be to remove the 500-foot buffer.
If you remove the 500-foot buffer, it would bring it to somewhat the status quo of where a concrete plant could be theoretically located.
So we'd have some sites where they would fit.
Yes.
If we remove that buffer.
Yes.
And I'd
So-
like to clarify something, because I heard there are very few sites. I did not hear there are no sites.
There are very few sites that are currently zoned ID, and to be completely clear as well, I had a conversation with David Swinson, and just as an FYI, he expressed concern because most of those ID sites, he is not anticipating concrete plants there, that he has a different vision for those areas.
Okay, yeah, Mr. Williams.
And that's why at second reading, I was comfortable with those conditions, because I thought they opened up more. And I understand that we didn't have a whole lot of time to research it, so we're saying now there's not, we think we got the same problem we did at first reading?
I included the map that shows you how much of the property is opened up in your packets. It did open it up a little, but from the staff perspective, it didn't open it up as much as I had hoped, but there was a few more properties that would be eligible.
Part of the
Ms.
issue,
Love.
part of the issue is that the areas that would appear to be open, that might be limited by this, in District 2, we already have 2 concrete plants there. So, I mean, we want a third and fourth, or, I mean, that's the, how many do we want?
Did I hear, did I hear you, Mr.
Well,
Roddy?
Just to speak to Allison's point, if you already have 2 there, it wouldn't be business-wise smart to locate a third and fourth one there, so I wouldn't be as concerned about Clover getting flooded with concrete plants. But I do have some concerns about this really restricting out concrete plants, going basically very, very few other options left throughout the county.
I think what the map doesn't show, though, Bump, is where the concrete plants already are. So if you look at this, if we got the map that has the little stars on it or something that shows where concrete plants already are, I think it tells a little bit different story.
And for me, I'm not as concerned about the fact that they have to come before us. That's what I'd like to have happen, is come before council for, as it was originally in the first reading before the adjustments were made, it was a permitted use in AGC, period. There was no coming before council or anything else. So if we're limiting it, and then they have to come before council for a rezoning to be able to do one, I'm okay with that. But it's going to still come before us. We're not saying there's never, ever going to be another.
It wasn't allowed in AGC, I don't think.
But it's not going, it's
It
going to
was never
special
allowed in
exception
AGC.
now.
That's the
Not in
issue,
AGC,
is
it's not in
that
AGC at all.
Oh, well, hang on, Mr. Johnson wants to speak now.
To follow up on Mr. Winkler's comments, I think Robert's talking about, when I hear somebody say we're outlawing concrete plants, we're not outlawing concrete plants. What we're simply saying is, if you'd like to open a concrete plant in an area that is appropriate for a concrete plant, you can come to council, ask that it be rezoned to ID. This council agrees with it, we will do that, then you can go to the ZBA and get your variance. We're not saying there will never,
Right.
because I can promise you, there is a whole lot of AGC right now, today, that in 20 years will have more and more ID and other things. It won't, the county will not look as green on a map, when we saw that map a couple minutes ago, as it is today. That's just not, that's not possible. I wish we could retain as much as we can, but it's just not. This growth is coming. I think it's highly appropriate that this council be allowed to pick where we think areas for industrial should be in the future. As we begin to pick those areas, concrete plants can develop in those areas, just like manufacturing could develop in those areas, and other industries can develop in those areas. That is the role of council, that is the role of the land use plan. So I fully support this ordinance.
Anybody else? Okay, I'll just say my piece. I totally agree that we needed to clean some things up and it not be in ag. And as Mr. Johnson points out, with growth, some of those ag areas may hopefully get industry and further growth. But with and just saying ID, I'm good with that. But when we have a buffer in there that makes it essentially impossible to do, I don't want to sit up here and play games. And so it makes no sense if we offer that, oh, you can't do it, but I mean, yeah, you can do it, but hey, you can't do it. So I'm not into doing things like that. It's a little bit of government overreach for me. So I certainly agree that it should be an ID, but if we're going to make it with setbacks, which makes it totally impossible with this ordinance, then I can't support that. So question on the motion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? No. So, was it 2 or?
4-3.
4-3. Chad said no too. Next item, council to consider third reading of an ordinance to amend the York County Code of Ordinances, Chapter 155 zoning code, so as to add a new supplemental regulation section designated as Section 155.502, specifying requirements for liability agreements related to certain industrial uses, landfills, mining, and non-metallic mineral product manufacturing, to specify the purpose for the agreement, its applicability and contents, the required road construction standards to be included, the provision of a financial guarantee by the applicant, and the requirement that the agreement must be reached and executed prior to final site plan approval, to amend the individual district regulations pertaining to special exceptions in AGC, AGC 1, RUD, ID, and light industrial by adding a reference to the supplemental regulations and providing for other matters related thereto.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion. Question on the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Next item, council to consider third reading of an ordinance to amend the York County Code of Ordinances, Chapter 155, zoning code, so as to amend Appendix D, Exhibit 1, Code of York County Performance Standards Agreement, to add a provision providing for notices of sound level violations to be issued to owner contractors suspected of exceeding maximum permitted sound levels, to authorize a sound study for uncorrected violations, and to require owner contractor to reimburse the county for the cost of the study if the violation is confirmed by the study, to add protections for the residential properties, correct the sound level chart, to delete the glare paragraph therein, and to provide for other matters related thereto.
Move to defer until the second meeting in June.
Second.
Discussion.
I'll just say,
Yes,
obviously,
Mr. Johnson.
I'm sure everyone received plenty of calls today, and just as we were willing to give groups the chance to weigh in on the ordinances on the wineries, I think we should give 30 days to allow groups that would be affected by this to give their opinion. So I have no problem with that. We want to get this right, so.
Any other comments? Yes, Mr. Winkler.
I'll just say I agree. I landed, and the reason I'm not in proper dress today is I had a grandson graduate in Lafayette High School in Lafayette, Louisiana on Saturday, and I flew back in today landed at 4 o'clock in Concord and came straight here. But when I landed in Concord and took my phone off of airplane mode, I had 4 voicemails from concerned citizens about this one ordinance right here. And so I think we owe it to them to take a little longer and make sure we get it right.
Yes, Mr. Williams.
Yeah, I'm just going to echo the same thing that we heard the agritourism, word agritourism was part of the winery ordinance, the problem. We're going to fix that with those stakeholders. We didn't allow staff time to have meetings with stakeholders. The calls that I got today, I think it's just going to be a matter of education. They're afraid that we're outlawing construction, but actually we're not changing any noise standards whatsoever. We are just simply changing the way that it's measured, and because currently the way that it's measured doesn't practically work. So, but I don't have a problem in the world deferring it so that they can understand that. Yeah, the only folks that might have a problem is the ones that have been able to cheat the current system and are going to have to stay clean with the new system. But that shouldn't be a problem. It should be fair for everyone.
Anybody else? And I'll just add to that I've been a supporter of this in the lighting ordinance, just to be having an open mind and understanding some needs there. But after the feedback I've gotten, and thank goodness we have 3 readings, and I'll be fine with the deferral. But when it comes up for final vote, I'm not supporting it. We're getting government on steroids right now, and it's too much overreach. Question on the motion. All those in favor of the deferral?
Aye.
Opposed, no. Next item. Council to consider the accommodations tax. Oh,
Number 9.
yep, I did skip one. Thank you, whoever pointed that out. Council to consider third reading of an ordinance to amend the York County Code of Ordinances, Chapter 155 zoning code so as to provide and establish a new outdoor lighting requirements section, to amend the definition section to include fixture, foot candle, fully shielded, glare, Kelvin, lamp, light trespass, lumen, luminaire, outdoor lighting, seasonal lighting, security lighting, and sky glow, to establish and add the outdoor lighting standards for the county and designate the purpose of the standards, their applicability to new construction, to provide for exemptions, to require an outdoor lighting plan, to establish a 5-foot setback, shielding requirements, appropriate light levels, maximum light levels at property line, to establish correlated color temperatures of installed luminaries, to designate special use requirements associated with outdoor recreation, canopies and parking structures, and outdoor sales lots, to recommend dark sky approved fixtures, and to establish nonconformities subject to declaration as a public nuisances requiring correction, to amend section 155.594 application for zoning compliance, to add requirements for outdoor lighting plan, and to provide for other matters related thereto.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
Motion to defer until our next scheduled meeting.
Second.
Yes, sir,
Chairman,
Mr.
my
Johnson.
understanding that our local power companies have contacted the county. I've not seen anything in writing from those groups. I think it should be shared with council certainly soon. And had some suggestions on potentially amending this ordinance to make it, I don't know what, but they certainly have some objections, and we need to take those into account simply before we pass it, as we have on the other ordinances.
Any further discussion? And I'll just add that the same thing I said earlier, we're getting feedback from the 2 utilities saying this is not a practical option. I'm getting concerned about the consultant recommendations and overreach. Question on the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Next item, council to consider the Accommodation Tax Advisory Committee's recommendation for financial year 2019 funding.
Move to approve. What was this?
Got a motion
What
to-
are we on?
Got a motion to approve.
New business.
Accommodation.
Okay,
Accommodation
second.
tax.
So we got a second. Approval, discussion.
This is the ATAX
Mr.
deal?
Williams?
All right.
I would,
Mr. Johnson?
I would prefer that this be deferred. Normally when we do HTAX applications, we actually get to review the applications. When I went through this weekend and earlier today, I realized we didn't have a single application and didn't have any basis for approving or disproving these, or what these funds might be used for. Certainly ATAX, accommodation tax, has to be spent or it all returns to Columbia. So certainly it has a use. I'd kind of like to know we're gonna spend roughly, $350,000 on it.
Mr. Roddy, would you be good with that, or you want to let it carry the original motion?
I would draw it till we can review all the details.
So you're willing to defer?
Yeah.
So, Michael, what's the best way to clean this up?
He's withdrawing his motion and a new motion to defer.
Thank you.
I think Kevin's trying to.
And, well, let me get a second. Were you going to second his deferral, Robert?
Well, I think.
Second to the deferral.
Okay. Kevin?
Is that deferral going to include the $200,000 to reimburse the county for Ebenezer Park?
It's a total deferral.
That's why I'll just make a comment that, for one thing on here, one of the applicants is the Western York County branch of the NAACP. That is for their Martin Luther King Parade, which most people may or may not know that is the longest running, continuously running MLK parade in the state of South Carolina.
That's the kind of thing we'd like to be able to know before we.
Application would have told us that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, question on the motion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those no. Next item, council to consider a transfer of $1,534,563.94 from Fund 1450 Pennies 1 to the general fund.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion, question,
Just repayment of the
Yes,
loan that
Mr.
we
Williams.
did for to finish Pennies 1.
We deferred it.
question on the motion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. There are no committee reports since the committee meeting was deferred. Now we're
We
on.
do have item number 3, the budget calendar.
Oh, that's the one we deferred, sorry. Sorry, getting old in my younger years. Let me go back to that one.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the budget calendar, to amend that we not meet this Wednesday night, the 23rd, and instead hold a budget workshop immediately following the public hearing that is scheduled for the budget.
Thank you, sir. Do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I originally
Mr.
brought
Johnson.
this up, and Mr. Williams, I did not, we weren't, I don't know.
Yeah, I was surprised. I don't know if y'all could tell, but I was a little surprised.
And it mainly
Certainly,
was.
I take my calendar so seriously, I was a little
Certainly,
surprised. Sorry about
I
that.
was very concerned and bothered by your being surprised.
The main reason for this is quite simply this. I think we have a month, almost 6 weeks before we vote on a budget. It seemed to me that I'd rather not hold another workshop until I actually hear from the public on their thoughts of the budget. That this workshop, I didn't think it would be as productive as a workshop would be once I've heard from people and been able to have that feedback. And then, so I asked that we do this along with obviously several other members.
And I guess that if we have nothing to update, if there's nothing to workshop about, there's no reason to workshop. I certainly don't want to do that. If we're behind on things, we can always schedule another one. In fact, we used to have one scheduled, and then we'd cancel it after the workshop if we didn't need it. But I'm guessing that you don't have a whole lot, the agenda.
My
agenda.
intentions would be to kind of go through the email I'm going to send out in response to Mrs. Cox's questions. I'll send that email out to y'all, and then I'd like you to further discussion to make sure we all understand the reserve fund. That's the 1422, sometimes referred as the pay-as-you-go or capital infrastructure fund. The reserve fund, make sure we all on the same page on how that works, and then walk through the calculations around paying the debt off, and we can have further discussions around levying the 0.4 of a mil to offset the state mismanagement of the retirement fund as well.
And the only other comment I'd make is technically, we probably don't have to have 2 meetings on the 30th. We can probably have a budget public hearing and a public workshop that starts at 6 o'clock, advertise one time, and we don't have to wait and all that good stuff.
However, the county attorney wants to do it.
Right. Well, he's going to do it how we tell him to do it, so if it's legal. So, I mean, that's the easiest way to do it, because, if he spends all his time trying to figure out the best way for us to do it, he wouldn't have anything else to do.
We can
Any other discussion?
convene immediately following the conclusion of the
Yeah.
public hearing.
Okay. Question on the motion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Next item is council member new non-agenda comments. Any council member have it? Yes, sir, Mr. Johnson.
Chairman, the last 2 weeks, I've learned quite a bit sitting here with us. I've learned that when we don't ask stakeholders questions on large issues affecting zoning and planning, that we do a whole lot of deferrals. I think that is a sign that we should, I know that our goal was to fast track these ordinances, to move them from zero to complete, which is always nice. But I think we have a duty to actually make sure that the people involved in the process, the experts, outside of just our own experts here at the county level, have some say in it as well. And I would hope that moving forward, that we have learned a valuable lesson, and that we will make sure that even if it takes 4 weeks longer, that we will delay long enough to make sure that we have the input, that we're making the right decisions.
Yeah, and I know I'm not supposed to add to it, but since nobody's listening.
Mr. Williams.
Yeah.
Mr. Williams, I listen to everything you say, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Blackwell.
Yes, sir.
No, I forgot what I was gonna say, since you're listening to me now.
I agree with Mike.
No, I guess I don't know that that's something that we learned. I think we knew that, but we thought that it was more important to fast track it. At least I certainly knew that a lot of times stakeholders lead to deferrals. But I was kind of surprised that some of them, we didn't defer them all, but it was a crapshoot. So yeah, it's public input. I always defer to too much public input.
And I want to say, on a totally different subject, but to congratulate Karen on finishing her leadership York County graduating.
And I must say she could teach the course, because she's an excellent clerk to council. Yes, sir, Mr. Shanahan.
Don't know if this is the right time. I just want to let you all know we had our first town hall meeting today at the fire training facility, and it went very well. Our citizens were very good to us.
Any other comment? Yes, sir, Mr. Winkler.
I just would like to remind everyone that this Sunday at 3:30 is the Veterans Memorial Service out at Lakeview Memorial Gardens, where the current Veterans Memorial is. But as of last Monday night, we got an approval from the City of York's Board of Architectural Review to start the process of creating a York County Veterans Memorial Park in the City of York. It was approved, phase 1, so the monument will be ordered, and I want to make sure Bill and Kevin get that process going as quickly as we can. But this Sunday, the service will be at 3:30 out on 321 between here and Clover, where the Veterans Memorial Park is. I'd love to see everybody there to support our veterans.
Yeah, and Linda is in the process of scheduling the meetings we need to make that process start, sir.
Thank you.
Now, I appreciate you bringing that up, Mr. Winkler. I'll be in St. Augustine, Florida, so I won't be able to make it, but I think everybody else that's going to be around should attend it. Any further comments? And I would add on to Mr. Johnson's comment that I'm a little getting more leery of consultants, because I would have hoped they would have talked to like the utility companies, got their input before we got hit with the feedback from those two companies. Next item is citizen concerns. David Classe, and I'm gonna give you 5 more minutes, okay? Because you'd already talked to us about this, but I'll give you another 5 minutes.
Thank you. If I may, I made some additional prints of my presentation material. I've presented to you a graphic of the current retirement community rooms at the Heritage Court at the same property where Heritage Tower is now. These are the interiors of the current rooms that are available there and occupied by many retirees. And this is also a architect's rendering of the proposed new facade for the building. As I presented last time, an engineering study has been done. They've x-rayed the building and reported that this actual building is actually very sound, very capable of being redeveloped and completed. I hope that whoever has it in their hearts, any ill will towards the prior owners of the building, can find forgiveness in their heart towards what has happened in the past and look at what has happened in the current community. There's been tremendous development there, in spite of the fact that, unfortunately, due to circumstances, the building has been derelict for many decades, actually. But Carolina Orch is a great retirement community, but very expensive. Many people can't afford it. Then you have Regent Park that's been very successfully developed, and True Homes, building a number of homes in that area, doing very well. I really believe that, as I pointed out, this would be a tremendous asset to our community, solve a problem that's actually nationwide. Where are the baby boomers going to retire? This is a great solution for that, a true Christian environment. It's really unfortunate. It doesn't make any sense that the county's attorney in this case appears to have refused to talk to the current owners to come up with a solution to settle this outside of court, save legal fees, and save any future bad publicity as a result. And I'm hoping that you can take into account the fact that as the current owner of a Florida engineering firm, as I mentioned, that I've been in the industry for over 25 years, most buildings are built 200% more than what the calculations require. I have many engineers that work for me, and that's kind of the rule of thumb when they design a building. That's one of the reasons why this building is still sound. The other thing that's going on is that if you really look at it, you have a building that's worth $15 million in its current condition. Yes, there's brick falling off the outside of the building. The brick exterior has nothing to do with the structure of the building. It's similar to stucco or even siding like you see on a home. It's strictly an exterior finish, and it does not have anything to do with the structure. The new design actually wants to put an exterior insulating finishing system on there for energy efficiency and a more modern look. And I urge you, in the name of God, stop persecuting this church and instead urge your attorneys and find a way amongst yourselves, get inspired to find a way to save this tower. It's going to be of great benefit to the community, and I urge you, please find it in your hearts to find a way. However you can do that behind closed doors. I know you can't bring it up in open forum till there's some action through the attorneys, but I urge you and I adjure you in the name of God, the name of the God of Israel, the name of the God of heaven, the name that on our license plate says, "In God we trust." Please try to find a way, find a way to make this building complete and a benefit to our community. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Williams.
Yeah, I mean, this is the second time here and didn't say anything the first time, and I don't know if your plan is to keep coming back, but it almost seems like you think that we don't want this to happen. I don't know that I can speak for everybody else, but I would love for this to happen, but we need the engineering drawings that you're talking about and what's going to bring it back up to code. I don't know if it's almost like somebody told you, we need to give permission. No, we're just waiting on the proper drawings I mean, I would love for it to be built up to code. I'm certainly not trying to stand in your way, so that's the only
Well, I
thing
deeply appreciate that.
Yeah, we're not going to have a debate. But
Understood.
Let them have us a little minute. Okay, thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you.
Next person is Miss Baxter. Are you here? Oh, of course you are. To talk about the Miss Black South Carolina pageant. I recognized you. Go figure. Just looked up and I recognized you.
Thank you. Good evening, council. I would first like to start off thanking you all for allowing me to come and tell you a little bit about my platform. My name is...
You need a name, address? Oh, okay.
Okay.
Names right your owners.
It is my distinct honor and pleasure to present to you today my Pump It Up platform, tell you a little bit about me, about the platform, and about the Miss Black South Carolina organization. So Pump It Up stands for Political Understanding Makes Progress, and I started this journey in 2017 after my first year of college, and I came up with this acronym after my major in college. I am a political science major, economics minor at Spelman College in Atlanta, Georgia. So I'm originally from Fort Mill, South Carolina. Like I said, I attend Spelman College. I'm going into my junior year. And I also attended Nation Ford High School, and I'm a 2016 graduate. So a little bit about Miss Black South Carolina. It is a platform-based pageant primarily focused on women in color, but it accepts everyone. And that is one thing I really like to highlight about this organization. So in 2010, the Miss Black South Carolina pageant program was developed to provide women an opportunity to showcase their talent, poise, and as well as grace. It is a Christian organization open to all women across South Carolina, primarily focused on women of color. And this pageant is also about equal representation, but also about building your community, also about making sure that everybody is equally represented, and also about making sure that your community is involved in everything that you do, and it's not just about the crown, and it goes beyond the stage. So my goal with my platform was to show youth that being politically involved can be fun, and showing them that being politically active can be fun as well. And I kind of live by the mantra that changing your attitude and expanding your understanding leads to your personal growth. And leadership begins where selfishness ends. So the moment that youth are educated about the things that are going on in their communities, the things that are going on in their home, and things that are going on in their state, they can build an understanding about the needs of others and realize that they can make an even bigger difference in the world, starting just in their county and in their state. So a couple of youth issues. Let's see if we can get this. Okay, so I asked youth as I went around the county what issues they feel like kids their age face today. And these are answers to their questions. So they answered about bullying. They said hunger, domestic violence, lack of sleep, lack of self-confidence. And those are just a couple of issues that they feel like they face, and these are things they feel like they're going to face in the future. Yes, kids know about Social Security. Yes, they listen to the table talk that their parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles are mentioning at the table, and they're really concerned about those issues. They're really concerned about potential wars that they may face or be involved in, whether it be wars within the nation, and also stress that's occurring in schools, stress of things that are happening at home. And also, one of the last things is I wanted to take note that children do rely on political leaders such as yourselves to ensure that they don't have to deal with these issues in the future or remove the threats of the issues that they face today. One thing that I really wanted to also focus on is kids know more than you think. A lot of times youth are kind of put to the side, kind of put in a corner, and they think, and they're marginalized into this one group that, no, like you don't know as much or you haven't had as much experience, but they know more than you really think. So I asked them these questions, and I asked them how old they have to be registered to vote. Normally it's 18, but recently in the state of South Carolina, you can be 17 years old to register to vote if you're 18 by November the 6th in the election year. I asked them what the U.S. Capitol was. They knew what that was. I asked them to name 2 political parties and things like that. So these are things that youth do know, and they really want you to know that they know, and they want you to know that you make a big difference in what they learned in school. You make a big difference on what's being taught at home. You make a big difference on what's going to affect their lives now and in the future. Youth can change the world. I always tell them at the end of my presentation that they have a responsibility to be better citizens. And it's statistically proven that young people who participate politically in their community from early on are more likely to become engaged citizens and voters. And it's important for them to know about politics. And I asked them why they think politics is important. And they know that being politically involved is something that can actually affect change. And I asked them what are things they can do to break the status quo, and they said they can lead protests, they can talk about issues that they feel are important, they can watch the news and voice their opinion about issues that they think are important even in their own communities. And they can also watch House of Reps and Senate meetings on TV, and they can also watch county council meetings on TV, which I'm pretty sure, hopefully, my friends and family that I've told about this live stream are watching right now, that they can become more politically involved, and they can hear the things that are happening, and they can hear the people that are actually concerned about things that happen in the everyday lives of their state. Voter registration is something that I really push as well. And this is also a QR code, so hopefully this is up on the screen on the TV. So this is actually something that within the app you can take a picture of, and it shows you where you can register to vote. You can update your registration. You can find a place where you can vote. You could do you can look at a sample ballot, and you can also get your absentee application as well. And my pledge to vote, this is the pledge that I say at the end of every presentation that I have with youth. I have them all stand up and they raise their right hand, and they repeat these words, and they say they pledge to be strong, they pledge to be impartial, they pledge to be nonpartisan when they vote, they pledge to learn about candidates before they vote, they pledge to connect their career to politics, to voice their opinion on issues, to not let their friends, family, teachers tell them how to vote or who to vote for. They pledge to vote as long as they live. They know that they're smart enough to vote, and they know that their opinion and their vote matters. So that's just a little bit about me. That's just a little bit about my platform, and thank you all so much for having me, and I will open the floor for questions, but if not, thank you so much again.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if you
Yes, sir.
you allow me a minute, I'd like to recognize our parents and grandparents who are here. I think Mr. Stanley Wells has been a long time York County employee. I'm not sure if he's retired yet. I hadn't seen him in a while. I talked to him, but I think he's still with the county. How long you been with the county? 45 years.
Wow.
Well,
Okay. Glad to have you.
You need a crown too.
Thank
ma'am.
you all so
Appreciate
much.
it. Next person is Greg Williams to address council regarding animal control. Yes, sir.
I'm here today to speak about service. The county council is aware that employees of York County provide a wide range of services to the public in many different arenas. But today I'd like to specifically address animal control. I was first exposed to animal control about a year and a half ago when I accepted the job for chief animal control position. I was excited to be put in a supervisor role and one that pertains directly to the public. I have devoted my life to public service and have been a law enforcement officer in both federal and local municipalities for the last 3 decades. York County obviously is kind of the smallest municipality I have ever been employed with, and I was encouraged to see what a close-knit group could accomplish. I have been fortunate enough to have many great role models as leaders, from the military to Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department. I studied leadership styles and found that they all have similar agendas: empower the people you oversee, cultivate strengths, build on weaknesses, and encourage through example. I set out to devote myself to these principles, but it certainly was no easy task. When I first got there, the staff advised me that there was little trust between them and the supervisors, that they fear for their jobs on a daily basis, and that prior administration had shown little interest for them or any other members of the staff. I was informed that animal control was called the red-headed stepchild of York County. The general opinion of the employees was that they were not being treated right by management and that they felt like they were expendable. They would confide in me that they felt threatened if they would go to a supervisor with a problem. They were even quoted of saying, "That'd be like painting a target on your back." I listened to what they had to say, and I decided to watch if any of these accusations were warranted. As it turns out, it was. Since my first day of work until today, I've witnessed a total of 27 employees who have either been terminated or forced to resign. That includes the last veterinarian, the last animal control supervisor, and now the current animal control supervisor has resigned after being there for less than a month. I have witnessed adverse working conditions where staff have been screamed at, and I've also witnessed empty promises followed by even more empty reassurances I found the way that the managers often solved a problem with a staff member was to simply get rid of the employee instead of taking the opportunity to train and cultivate them so they can improve. I find this level of indiscretion appalling and completely without merit. This also sets up a revolving door atmosphere when you do not properly train employees and then hold them to the same standards as those who have already been trained. I would like to give you a few examples of what I personally witnessed and have happened to me when working in an official capacity. It became clear to me after several months of working and seeing so many staff members either resigning or being terminated that a problem with leadership did exist. The county manager asked me my opinion on how to improve the working conditions. After speaking to him, he told me that I was to oversee all operations within the department while no other supervisor was there. He did promise me a 10% raise, but several months went by and he seemed to forget. I was later told that I would receive the raise. I was given an apology. And although I was grateful for it, I was also disappointed that I could easily be forgotten. It didn't seem like such a reward for hard work or sincere at that point. I was also told the same day that I would also oversee animal control in the absence of a supervisor who had just resigned. I was the only supervisor there for several months. I followed the verbal instructions given to me by Mr. Shanahan and went right to work regarding all daily activities. I continued to address the staff and work on building team atmosphere. I worked hard even though so many people were continuing to leave. I was then felt like I was making some progress. There was started to be teamwork again. I was then made to stop supervising by my direct supervisor, Ryan Blank. I told him I would do so. Having been the only supervisor in the building, it was natural that others would ask me questions or gravitate towards me for clarification. I would advise them that they would have to make an appointment with the Assistant Director of Public Works, would be Brian. But he was never present at Animal Control. As you know, his office is down at Public Works. After a week of this, I was then given a written disciplinary action for supervising others that were not in my department, after I was explicitly ordered to by the county manager. I took the discipline and I didn't say a word. I signed it because at the time I thought I was still able to cultivate the people I had left. But after this incident where I was disciplined, I noticed again a deterioration of leadership. There seemed to be no cohesive leadership between the managers or effective communication between their own staff. This was new ground for me, as I've never witnessed such confusion and diverse behavior in any leadership I've ever been involved with over 3 decades. You must have trust to gain credibility. You must have credibility to gain trust. You must advocate on the side of your employee so they feel valued and not expendable. You must invest in your employees' growth and ensure they receive the proper training, the proper encouragement, and that's for the betterment of the citizens of your county. You have to say what you mean what you say, but never say it in a mean way. This brings me to the last example of leadership and credibility. After the second round of mass terminations, the county manager came again to the animal control office to address the staff as he'd done in the past. When other staff members were fired, he would come and talk to us. I've always thought that as an opportunity for us to air our grievances. He told us that we were doing good work. He was invested in seeing animal control succeed. He went on to explain that he speaks to everyone who resigns from the county before they leave, so he can ascertain what has worked and what hasn't. He also said that everybody currently in this room was safe. Since that meeting, 5 more people have been terminated, and one of my staff members resigned to pursue a career as an officer in the Air Force. It appears that no one in that room was safe after all. And despite the reassurance from the county management, Officer Jake Hartley, who is now on his way to the Air Force Academy, was unable to speak to the county manager on his exit interview. Today, there are currently 6 animal control officers and 2 vet staffs, 1 veterinarian, to take care of animal control.
Greg, I gotta give you 1 more minute, okay?
Sure. During my tenure at chief, I've organized a county outreach program. I work with the Humane Society to address animal complaints as a team effort and promote education. I also implemented an award and recognition policy for the officers. This last example was met with great speculation and was not received well by the managers. I would often email my supervisors and let them know what a great job an individual have done. This seemed to be frowned on, and often those emails were never returned. I had a ceremony for the officers of the Animal Control Week by nominating an Officer of the Year. I asked my supervisor, Eric Ritt, if he would ask Bill to present the plaque, but again, he forgot. When the day grew near to the ceremony, I was the one that was left to give that plaque. There is no one I have met that truly has the best interests of animal control staff at heart. No one seems willing to advocate on behalf of an employee, and there's no current employee grievance process that isn't obsolete. The grievance process was first mandated in 1984 and only updated in 1993. Moving forward, please consider that your people matter. They have families, bills, and have been nothing but dedicated to the citizens of York County. Stop throwing away good people due to inconvenience. Make them better. Train them. Empower them to make them feel as if they are a valued member of a team. I promise you, if you start to change now the way you lead, the county will be the benefactor of this investment.
Thank you, Greg. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Do we have a motion for executive session?
Yes, sir. I move we go into executive session to discuss a personnel matter relating to the IT director and receive legal advice regarding concrete plants.
And how about the sheriff's
They're
department?
not here.
Oh, they're not, okay. Question on the motion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those no, back in 5 minutes. We just finished the executive session, there were no action items. Do we have any other further discussions? There being none, do we have a motion to close?
Move to close. Second.
Discussion, all those in
Adjourn. That's a motion to adjourn, correct?
Yeah.
All right, all right.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. We're so glad to have Mr. Williams here to correct our actions.
I bet you are. We'll see what happens.
Aye.
Question on the motion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. We are adjourned.